In the ongoing saga that is SpaceX and the FAA and the Fish and Wildlife Service and a bunch of other federal entities, it looks like today SpaceX might have gotten a win. Let's take a look. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So I wanted to look at a CNBC article from a couple of days ago here about SpaceX and the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Endangered Species Act and a whole bunch of other, lovely bureaucratic things. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to go through this article. It looks to me, even though there's a lot of kind of back and forth in the verbiage, it seems to me that this is a fairly significant SpaceX win. So that's a good thing for Elon and for SpaceX. I don't know as much about the fish and wildlife. That may actually be a problem for them. All right, so let's take a look at the article. This is dated May 3rd, so 2 days ago at this point. SpaceX Starbase expansion plans will harm endangered species, according to Fish and Wildlife Service. So the title of the article doesn't sound particularly good. We have to read till the end to get to the part that I think is good. Anyway, so we've got some bullet points here at the top, but let's actually look at the article. We also have a piping plover, which is one of the endangered species here, so very adorable looking creatures. It seems like it's always the poster children for Endangered Species Act are always cute little creatures instead of like spiders or something like that, right? So anyway, a good graphic. It shows like, oh, it's a cute little baby and a cute little bird. But anyway, okay, so SpaceX must take steps to track and mitigate its impact on endangered species and their habitat in order to gain approvals for testing and commercial launches of its Starship Super Heavy Lift vehicle in Boca Chica, Texas, according to documents from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service obtained by CNBC. So interestingly enough, this is in response to a Freedom of Information Act request, and I found that rather curious about that. So they weren't sharing this automatically. If you don't know about the United States, we have a Freedom of Information Act. What is it? FOIA. So I can't remember. It's not FOIA. Anyway, there is an acronym for it. I can't remember what it is right at the moment. But anyway, you're allowed to request documents from any sort of public entity, and you can then say like, oh, okay, I want this. So anyway, so you can ask for documents from entities and you can get them. So this is where this is coming from. It's not coming from voluntarily being released, but being forced to be released. Anyway, the document shows that there has been a recent decline in the endangered bird species, the piping plover, that has been correlated with SpaceX activity. Correlation, of course, is not causation, so that's an interesting little factor, but they're saying that basically the two things have been going on simultaneously. Without even like the SpaceX aspect of it, I know when we went there a year ago, there's a lot of road traffic, there's a lot of people there now, so regardless of whether they're launching spacecraft or not, just having that many people in an area is obviously going to have an effect on the wildlife. So in the end, of course, as CNBC notes, that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, has the ultimate say over whether SpaceX is allowed to continue launching and continue operations and at what cadence and all of that stuff. But of course, they're taking input from all of these other governmental agencies. This paragraph right here is quite good. The company's ability to expand its business and conduct launches beyond its existing Falcon rockets, which are not in Boca Chica anyway, hinges on this FAA approval. So does the fate of SpaceX's business commitments in Texas. I think that that's an important factor here. And I think we're going to read that as we get lower, that, Texas has been very much like, and the Brownsville area has been very much like, we want this, we really, really want this. So that is going to have an effect on the people making decisions. And here, as I'd noted before, I've previously talked about this, in February when Elon was doing his SpaceX presentation, he said that they could just move all this stuff to Florida if they have to. It's not ideal for them, but they can do that. And I said at the time, and I'm repeating right here, that Elon Musk was using that as a threat. He was saying to the local community and to Texas, if you guys don't cooperate and help us with all of this stuff, we're going to pick up and move camp, right? It's not a good economic situation for SpaceX by any means, because they've put a lot of money and time into building this out, but it's also really bad for the local area. So then we get some details about what SpaceX requested, right? They submitted this in September to the FAA. They said they wanted a new launch pad I don't know if that's the one they're already building or already built, or whether that's a secondary one. It's unclear. I know that they definitely want 2 launch pads, so it might actually be the completely new one. A new landing pad, power plant, natural gas processing facilities, water infrastructure, including deluge systems and retention ponds for use to cooling the launch pad. So that's the water system where you have to deluge it in order to keep the sound and the vibrations down to not damage the rocket, and of course not damage everything in the area, because it is very loud launching these rockets. So of course, SpaceX is asking the FAA for permission to continue operating in the area and to launch a lot of Starship rockets. Starship, of course, being the gigantic thing, and the booster, of course, being the thing that takes Starship up into orbit. So as part of the FAA's process, it's including a consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service to ensure that the agency won't violate the Endangered Species Act if it gives SpaceX a go-ahead with its proposed activity. So if you don't know, the SpaceX Boca Chica site is located right in the midst of a whole bunch of restricted areas where there's endangered wildlife, both sea wildlife and also on the land as well. So it's a pretty sensitive area actually where they're working on all of this. So the document goes on to say that there would be an impact on some species protected under the Endangered Species Act, as well as hundreds of acres of their critical habitat, although the activity would not completely wipe out these species. I think that's a relatively important last little caveat to this whole thing. And then of course we get to the land creatures that would actually be affected by all of this, including the piping plover, the red knot, that jaguarundi, I don't know what that species is, and ocelots, which are big cats. I like the next sentence, of course. It says that, vehicle traffic, things like that, noise, that's stuff you expect, but then heat, explosion, and fragmentation. I think it's fragmentation of habitat, but I'm imagining fragmentation of the explosion. But anyway, so, those are the things that an active rocket building and launching site are going to cause, which is obviously going to be disruptive to the local animal population. Interestingly enough, we have species of sea turtle also being affected, but the Fish and Wildlife Service has deferred to NOAA, or National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, for marine life expertise. You gotta love the bureaucracy. Everybody's going like, you deal with that, you deal with that. But anyway, so it's not clear what NOAA is gonna say about all of this, but there is the Kemp's Ridley sea turtle, which nests on the beaches of Boca Chica, and it is the most critically endangered sea turtle in the world. Wow. So that's actually a big potential stumbling block as well. And of course, we get a few more details about the acreage and everything like that. The recommendations are the important part. The Fish and Wildlife Service wants SpaceX to monitor affected animal populations carefully, limit construction and launch activity to specific seasons or times of day and night, and use shuttles to reduce vehicle traffic of workers on location. The agency is also encouraging further research to understand potential effects on the monarch butterfly, which is a species that of course travels between the United States and Mexico each year. So I guess one of their potential stopover points is Boca Chica. All right, and then we get to the takeaway on all of this. So the Fish and Wildlife opinion might be good news for SpaceX. So even though it doesn't sound super fantastic, it actually, all of these recommendations and the fact that they're only recommendations and they're not like you can't do this and they're like you should monitor these things, that is actually good news ultimately for SpaceX. So first of all, as Jared Margolis says, the agency requires very little in the way of spending, conservation, and other commitments by SpaceX. As he says, it seems the Fish and Wildlife Service is bending over backwards to figure out a way to permit more of what has been a very detrimental use of the Boca Chica site as far as impacts to wildlife go. So you can definitely tell what Jared, feels about all of this stuff. He's not very much in agreement, but it sounds like this is generally good news for SpaceX. Margolis notes that the Fish and Wildlife Service did not ask for well-defined or large commitments by SpaceX where conservation is concerned. He pointed to Fish and Wildlife Service requiring SpaceX to donate a meager $5,000 to an ocelot conservation group per year. That is a rather small amount of money considering how much environmental impact they're having on all of this. In Margolis' opinion, too many of the agency's requests were merely recommendations and not enforceable under the terms and conditions of an eventual FAA permit. Quote, "This company with very deep pockets, the least they can do is address these harms in a meaningful way." So again, overall, SpaceX was going to have to deal with some of this stuff no matter what, because they've built this site in the middle of a nature preserve area. If you ever go down there, Fish and Wildlife Service is always telling you not to go in certain areas because they're all protected, and SpaceX is like right in the middle of all that stuff. So anyway, they were going to have to do something about all of this, but in terms of permitting and everything, this is really, really good news for SpaceX. It appears that that they are not going to be required to do anything too outrageous. Most of these things are recommendations, not requirements, so that if they choose not to do it, I hope that they will do it, because I think it would be good for the environment and good for public perception. But if they chose not to do it, there would not be a lot of punishment for them involved. And of course, as this feeds into the FAA's final decision, this should hopefully help the FAA to make a decision to allow SpaceX to do more activity in the coming years. So overall, given the situation, I think this is about as good a news as SpaceX could have hoped for coming from the Fish and Wildlife Service. I don't know too much else that could have been done. It really does seem like the FWS is sort of bending over backwards to really help SpaceX make this thing a go and to help the local population. Of course, I certainly hope that SpaceX will do their best to try to make sure that they do protect these endangered species. That would be a very good thing. Good for the planet, speaking of that kind of thing. Even if you want an Earth 2.0, it's a good idea to take care of Earth 1.0 at the same time. But in terms of their ability to function in South Texas, this is all really good news. Of course, we haven't got a final decision. We haven't heard from NOAA yet about the sea creatures and things in the area, but hopefully we will get those in the next coming weeks. And by the end of May, fingers crossed, we'll actually have a decision that will allow SpaceX to continue and to grow operations in the Boca Chica area. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it fun and thought-provoking. If you did, please do hit the like button, because that's how YouTube knows to share it with other people, and also consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. In this case, it's actually Mars Embassy. Thank you so much for pointing out this article. I had not seen this myself. I've been very busy this week. So he sent that to me this morning and I was like, oh, that's definitely worth a quick video on. So thank you so much for that. And of course, if you want to join the team, check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.